You are standing beside the Nile, and the most powerful civilization on Earth is being built on mud, hunger, forced labor, and faith. Not because Egyptians were foolish, not because they were cruel by nature, because survival in this landscape demanded order. Floodwater rises, granaries empty, a king becomes a god. Egypt was not just a civilization. Egypt was a survival machine. You will understand how ancient Egypt rose from scattered farming villages into one of history's greatest civilizations, and why it eventually cracked under the same systems that once made it strong. Most people imagine Egypt as pyramids, gold, and eternal kings, but the deeper story is stranger. Egypt was a battle between the river, the desert, the body, and the human need to believe that chaos could be controlled. Picture the Nile Valley more than 5,000 years ago. A thin green strip of life cuts through a desert, while predictable floods leave behind black soil, rich enough to feed villages, workers, priests, soldiers, and kings. By around 3100 BCE, Egypt was becoming a unified kingdom, traditionally linked to Narmer or Menes. Though researchers still debate the exact process, survival begins when people turn nature into a schedule. Archaeologists found early royal tombs, ceremonial objects, and the famous Narmer palette. At first, they thought Egypt's rise was mostly the story of one conqueror forcing two lands together. Then, they realized the truth was probably more complicated. The Narmer palette shows Narmer wearing symbols of both Upper and Lower Egypt, and it contains some of the earliest hieroglyphic inscriptions known. But unification was likely a long process of warfare, ritual, trade, and political consolidation. The evidence is not just in royal art, it is in seals, graves, administrative marks, and the growing power of officials who could count grain, command labor, and speak in the name of the king. Egypt did not rise because one man wore a crown. It rose because people learned to organize fear. And once fear was organized, it could build monuments. Researchers discovered that the pyramids were not random wonders dropped into the desert. At first, they thought the Great Pyramid was mainly a symbol of arrogance. Then they realized it was also a machine of administration. During the Old Kingdom, Egypt developed powerful central authority, provincial administration, scribes, taxation, labor organization, and royal ideology. The Great Pyramid of Khufu was built around the 26th century BCE, and it originally rose about 146.6 meters, or 481 feet. Its stones, ramps, tools, workers' settlements, bakeries, bones, and graffiti reveal not only power, but planning. Thousands of people had to be fed, beer had to be brewed, copper tools had to be repaired, stone had to move under a burning sun. The pyramid was not only a tomb, it was a nation proving it could command time, bodies, and belief. But any machine this large can jam. Archaeologists found that after the Old Kingdom, Egypt entered the first intermediate period. At first, they thought this was simply a dark age caused by weak kings. Then they realized environmental stress may have played a role too. Evidence suggests that low Nile floods and climate instability contributed to famine, local conflict, and the weakening of central authority, although researchers still debate how much climate versus politics mattered. Tombs from local governors grew more important. Texts speak of disorder. Power moved away from the royal center. The same river that had fed Egypt could fail Egypt. If the flood was too low, fields shrank. If fields shrank, grain disappeared. If grain disappeared, loyalty became fragile. A god king looked less divine when children were hungry, and this was Egypt's first great warning. A civilization can survive enemies. It struggles when its own promises stop working. Researchers discovered that Egypt rose again in the Middle Kingdom, and later reached imperial power in the New Kingdom. At first, they thought Egyptian strength came mainly from isolation. Then they realized Egypt was never truly isolated. It traded, fought, borrowed, adapted, and absorbed ideas from Nubia, the Levant, and the wider Eastern Mediterranean. During the New Kingdom, roughly 1539 to 1077 BCE, Egypt became an empire with warrior pharaohs, huge temples, professional armies, chariots, gold wealth, and international diplomacy. Evidence comes from temples at Karnak and Luxor, royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings, diplomatic letters, battle reliefs, weapons, and inscriptions. Egypt's greatness was not silence, it was contact. It learned from danger. It turned enemies into borders, tribute, soldiers, and stories. But empire stretches a civilization thin. The farther power travels, the more expensive survival becomes. Archaeologists found scenes at Medinet Habu showing Ramesses III defeating groups, often called the Sea Peoples. At first, they thought these invaders explained the collapse of the Bronze Age world. Then they realized the collapse was probably caused by many pressures at once: warfare, migration, drought, trade disruption, internal tension, and weakened palace economies all mattered, and the exact role of the Sea Peoples remains debated. Egypt survived the crisis better than some neighbors, but it was changed. The new kingdom weakened, priests gained power, foreign dynasties ruled at times. Libyans, Nubians, Assyrians, Persians, Greeks, and eventually Romans all became part of Egypt's long ending. In 332 BCE, Alexander the Great took Egypt. In 30 BCE, after Cleopatra VII and Mark Antony were defeated, Egypt became a Roman province. The civilization did not vanish in one night. It was slowly transformed. Imagine watching the Nile fail and knowing your family's food is buried in a future flood that may never come. Imagine dragging stone for a king whose face you may never see, because everyone believes his tomb protects the world. Imagine hearing foreign armies at the edge of the desert while priests tell you the gods still hold the sky in place. What would you cling to when the system that fed you also controlled you? And yet, after the darkest parts, Egypt still shows us something deeply human. People cooperated. They cared for families. They buried their dead with objects, prayers, food, and symbols of hope. They wrote stories, healed bodies, measured fields, tracked stars, and built communities around a river that could give life or take it away. Cooperation was humanity's greatest weapon, not bronze, not stone, not crowns. Your brain still wants patterns when life feels chaotic. Your body still reacts when food, safety, and belonging feel uncertain. You may not worship a pharaoh, but you still live inside systems built to promise stability. Honestly, I think this is what makes the story so human. We cannot know every detail of what happened, but the science underneath is solid. Egypt rose because people learned to organize survival.
Egypt fell because no system, no king, and no monument can control chaos forever. Before us, there was the river, and beside it, history's greatest civilization learned to rise, shine, and fall.
But Egypt's story did not end with broken temples. It survived inside language, memory, stone, and sand. Every carved wall was a message sent into the future. Every tomb was a promise that death was not the final silence. Every canal, field, and granary carried the same ancient question: how do humans survive when nature is bigger than power? The answer was never simple. Egypt used kings. Egypt used gods. Egypt used writing. Egypt used labor. Egypt used fear. But beneath all of it, Egypt used cooperation. Farmers trusted the flood. Scribes trusted numbers. Workers trusted bread, beer, and each other. Priests trusted ritual. Families trusted the hope that tomorrow would still come. And when that trust broke, the civilization shook. That is why ancient Egypt feels so close. Even after thousands of years, it was not made by statues. It was made by people. People with sore backs. People with hungry children. People with dreams of safety. People who looked at the same sky you look at now. The pyramids still stand because stone can last. But the real miracle was not the stone. The real miracle was the human mind that imagined something larger than one lifetime. That is the secret of Egypt. It rose when people believed the world could be ordered. It weakened when order became too heavy to carry. It fell when outside pressure and inside strain became greater than the system itself. And still, it did not disappear. It became part of everything that came after. Greek Egypt, Roman Egypt, Christian Egypt, Islamic Egypt, modern Egypt. Layer after layer, the river kept moving. The people changed. The monuments remained. And before us, beside the Nile, ancient Egypt became a civilization that refused to be forgotten.